Hi, my name is Blair Beasley, and I am the Director of Climate Strategies at the Ray C. Anderson Foundation. We are proud to be one of 5 Georgia-based family foundations that have come together to co-create and launch the inaugural Drawdown Georgia Climate Solutions and Equity Grant. I want to thank our partners at the Candida Fund, the R. Howard Dobbs Jr. Foundation, the Sapelo Foundation, and the Wilbur and Hilda Glenn Family Foundation. To learn more about the grant, please go to our website at drawdownga.org/grants. There you will find lots of information about the application process and the grant itself. This recording is intended to provide some supplemental background on Drawdown Georgia, which is the inspiration for the grant, and to walk through the 10 Drawdown Georgia climate solutions that the grant lifts up. So let's dive in. I thought it would be helpful to spend just a few minutes setting the stage for why efforts like Drawdown Georgia and the Drawdown Georgia Climate Solutions and Equity Grant are so important. I'm going to borrow some framing for this part of the discussion from a former colleague of mine who used to note that it's real, it's happening, and it's us. So what does this mean? Well, the climate science is really robust. The Earth's climate is changing as a result of an increase in carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has climbed to levels not seen in more than 4 million years. We've reached a dangerous milestone, with atmospheric carbon dioxide now 50% higher than when the industrial age began. CO2 and other greenhouse gases act like a global blanket, trapping heat in the Earth's atmosphere. And it's us, people, that are responsible for this increase in greenhouse gas emissions. The scientific consensus is that this is not a natural phenomenon that tracks with natural variations in the Earth's climate. Instead, it's connected directly to pollution from human activities, primarily from the burning of fossil fuels. So what does this mean? Well, back to my colleague's framing, it means things are warmer, weirder, and on average worse. I'll give you a few examples from Georgia. So in Georgia in 2019, it was the warmest year on record since observations began in 1895. The Atlanta metro area experienced 91 days with temperatures above 90 degrees that year, and we expect the heat to keep on coming. Georgia currently averages about 20 dangerous heat days a year when the heat index is 104 or greater. By 2050, it's projected that Georgia will see more than 90 such days a year. And things can certainly be weirder as a result of these changes. Huge downpours, more regular 100-year floods, more impactful droughts, hurricanes, and wildfires. On average, things are worse as a result of a changing climate. That's true now, and projections show it will be increasingly true for future generations if we stay on this current path. And importantly, those impacts are not felt evenly across our communities. Instead, the most severe harms from climate change fall disproportionately upon communities who are least able to prepare for and recover from impacts such as heat waves and flooding. These communities are overwhelmingly racial and ethnic minority communities, many of which have been made more vulnerable to the impacts of climate change by historic and current unjust systems. So now for the rest of this video, I'm going to focus on the now what. What can we do about this? What climate solutions are ready to make a big difference today in Georgia and begin reducing the greenhouse gas emissions that are fueling this crisis? Drawdown Georgia is a statewide initiative that helps to answer the now what by providing a roadmap for how all of us in Georgia can help move our state to a more sustainable future by drawing down greenhouse gas emissions. It takes its inspiration from Project Drawdown, which started as a New York Times best-selling book and is now a really wonderful nonprofit focused on global solutions for taking action on climate change. Researchers from across our state came together to localize this work, highlighting climate solutions that make the most sense for Georgia, those with a strong track record that are cost competitive and market ready. So Drawdown Georgia is rooted in research and focused on action. It has grown into a leaderful movement, including many partners and funders working to advance climate solutions in Georgia. So what did those researchers find? Well, the research underpinning Drawdown Georgia highlights 20 climate solutions that are ready to make a big impact in our state. As you can see, these solutions span 5 key sectors: electricity, buildings and materials, food and agriculture, land sinks, and transportation. The research found that if we deploy these solutions to ambitious but achievable levels, we could reduce our state's emissions by 1/3 in 2030. The Drawdown Georgia Climate Solutions and Equity Grant highlights 10 of these solutions, and I'll dig into those momentarily. But before I do, it's important to highlight a fundamental part of this analysis and this initiative that we call Beyond Carbon. As the name implies, this is a focus on how climate solutions can impact societal priorities beyond carbon emissions. This includes impacts on equity, the larger environment, public health, and the economy. This grant really focuses on equity and the intersection of climate solutions and equity. And in the next section, I'll try to unpack that intersection a little more. So with Drawdown Georgia as inspiration, we are proud to launch the Drawdown Georgia Climate Solutions and Equity Grant. As I mentioned, the grant focuses on 10 of those Drawdown Georgia solutions and will fund projects that apply, grow, or scale at least one of these solutions in low-income BIPOC communities in Georgia. BIPOC is an acronym that means Black, Indigenous, and people of color. The 10 climate solutions are alternative transportation, coastal wetlands protection, composting, conservation agriculture, energy efficiency improvements, food waste reduction, large-scale solar, plant-forward diet, rooftop solar, and tree planting. I've spoken about the why climate, so I also want to directly address the question, why equity? As I mentioned, low-income minority communities often face a disproportionate impact to a changing climate. These same communities stand to benefit from the environmental, economic, and health benefits associated with advancing climate solutions in our state. Pursuing equitable outcomes and equitable processes is the right thing to do. Moreover, we will not meet our climate goals unless all Georgians have the agency and opportunity to help guide our low-carbon future. The goal of the Drawdown Georgia Climate Solutions and Equity Grant is to fund projects that will apply, grow, or scale climate solutions and prioritize equity in low-income BIPOC communities across Georgia. So for each of the 10 climate solutions that this grant lifts up, I'm going to walk through a slide like this. The slides highlight the solution, share some quick facts, and point to some potential benefits that can occur when we invest in climate solutions with a focus on equity. A big caveat here before I dive in, these are really intended to be examples of potential benefits. There are certainly others that successful proposals and successful projects can and should point to. Okay, let's get started. First is alternative transportation. This Drawdown Georgia climate solution is focused on replacing car trips with more environmentally friendly transportation options like biking and walking and electric scooters and electric bikes. And this is important because transportation is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in Georgia and in our country. Cars are the dominant form of transportation in the United States, with 87% of daily trips occurring in personal vehicles. Moreover, cars are often used for short trips that have the possibility of being replaced with carbon-cutting options like walking, biking, electric scooters, and electric bikes. So what are some of the potential benefits of expanding alternative transportation with an equity focus in low-income BIPOC communities in Georgia? Well, first, reducing car trips can help improve local air and water quality, as reduced car trips leads to reduced pollution associated with the burning of gasoline and diesel fuels. And these changes can have positive impacts for communities. For example, there is ample evidence linking pollution from cars to asthma. As the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services reports, nationwide, non-Hispanic African Americans were 40% more likely to have asthma than non-Hispanic whites in 2018. There are also potentially positive health benefits to be had by increasing opportunities for exercise by walking and biking. And finally, there could be economic development opportunities associated with increased foot traffic in some communities. Next is coastal wetlands protection. This Drawdown Georgia solution focuses on preserving coastal ecosystems in our state, including seagrasses, tidal salt marshes, and freshwater marshes. These ecosystems are powerful carbon sinks and can sequester carbon in plants and soils. In fact, Georgia's tidal marshes sequester about 1.4 million metric tons of carbon dioxide a year, primarily through sediments. Georgia has about 100 miles of coastline that is home to more than 420,000 acres of tidal marshes. This is the largest of any state on the U.S. Atlantic seaboard. Preserving and expanding coastal wetlands can have equity-related benefits. For example, these wetlands can help make communities along the coast more resilient to some of the impacts of a changing climate, such as more impactful storm surges and coastal flooding. Some of these coastal areas have cultural significance, so preserving wetlands can also help preserve culturally significant sites. And finally, these ecosystems can support tourism, which provides jobs and economic development opportunities. Next is composting. This climate solution focuses on composting organic materials instead of sending them to landfills. Composting breaks down the organic matter into nutrient-rich carbon sequestering fertilizer. Composting can keep organic matter like food waste and yard waste out of landfills. And this matters because when organic matter breaks down in a landfill, it produces methane gas, which is a powerful greenhouse gas. And lots of this material is shipped to landfills each year. In fact, according to the US EPA, more food reaches landfills than any other category of municipal solid waste. 37% of this food waste in our country happens in people's homes. Luckily, people can compost at home, and there are also municipal, private, and nonprofit composting services. So examples of project benefits that center equity could include improved soil health. Composting creates nutrient-rich soil that's good for the land and valuable for gardening and growing food. And projects that focus on composting could also help expand access to these composting services or expand the opportunity to compost at home. Next is conservation agriculture. This Drawdown Georgia climate solution includes climate-friendly agriculture practices such as crop rotation, cover cropping, and reduced tillage. These practices can benefit the land and sequester carbon in plants and soil. And this solution is important in a state like Georgia, which has about 3.8 million acres of croplands. Cotton and peanut crops comprise more than 50% of these croplands. Many carbon-friendly agricultural practices are already in use in our state. In fact, about half of the croplands are already under conservation tillage practices. So, how can conservation agriculture projects center equity? Well, possible benefits could include improved soil health. So when farmers are able to utilize conservation agriculture practices that are well suited to their crops and their land, it can improve the soil health on their farms. And in addition, some practices are also associated with increased crop yields. Next is energy efficiency improvements. This Drawdown Georgia climate solution focuses on making improvements to existing buildings to reduce energy use. This saves money and reduces emissions. Buildings contribute to greenhouse gas emissions through the electricity and energy they use to power, heat, and cool the space. In Georgia, in 2021, about 30% of the state's net emissions were associated with residential buildings. Luckily, there are many options to make a building more energy efficient. This could include improving insulation, installing LED lighting, and replacing conventional HVAC systems with high-efficiency heat pumps. In fact, Drawdown Georgia has a climate solutions toolkit to help answer people's questions about how to make their homes more energy efficient on Drawdown Georgia's website, which is drawdowngA.org. Investing in energy efficiency in low-income BIPOC communities in Georgia can provide equity-related benefits. This includes reducing energy burden. Low-income Georgians face high energy burdens, meaning that an outsized portion of their income goes toward home energy bills, including electricity, natural gas, and other heating fuels. Energy efficiency improvements can reduce the amount of energy that a building consumes, lowering electricity and utility bills. Some energy efficiency improvements can be done by residents, but many of these improvements need trained professionals, and this creates an opportunity to support local jobs. The next climate solution is food waste reduction. This Drawdown Georgia solution includes efforts to reduce the amount of food that is produced but not eaten. Food waste generates greenhouse gases in every step of the food production and distribution process. Food waste occurs for a variety of reasons. This includes people purchasing more food than they need, or customers rejecting bruised or misshapen produce. Food waste can also occur when food rots on farms or in the distribution process. And it happens a lot. According to the USDA, between 30 and 40% of the food supply is wasted each year. Reducing food waste can provide equity-related benefits. For example, when edible food is matched with people in need of food, instead of being sent to a landfill or composted, it can improve food access and food security in a community. And when people only buy what they need, it can save them money. Next up is LargeScale Solar. This climate solution includes the growth of large and community-scale solar farms that create clean, renewable electricity. Replacing coal and gas-fired power plants with lower carbon sources of electricity like solar is incredibly important. The electricity sector is Georgia's second largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. Fortunately, our state has a powerful solar resource. In fact, it receives more sun hours per year than any other state in the Southeast besides Florida. And it's already being utilized. Georgia ranks 7th nationally for the total amount of solar energy capacity installed. Almost all of this solar is large scale. And more large-scale solar is in the pipeline. Georgia Power's 2022 Integrated Resource Plan was approved by the Public Service Commission in July. This is the plan that the Public Service Commission approves every 3 years that lays out how Georgia Power will meet its electricity demand. The 2022 Integrated Resource Plan includes 2,100 megawatts of new large-scale solar capacity by 2025. Increasing large-scale solar in Georgia can provide equity-related benefits. For example, when solar power replaces coal and gas-fired power plants, it can improve air and water quality for the nearby communities. And the building of new solar farms can create economic development opportunities. Next is plant-forward diets. This Drawdown Georgia solution is focused on the climate and health benefits of eating a diet that includes more fruits, vegetables, and other plant-based foods. Meat, eggs, and dairy are typically more carbon intensive than plant-based alternatives, so reducing consumption of these foods can lower greenhouse gas emissions. On average, people in Georgia consume about 105 pounds of meat each year. More than half of that consumption is beef and pork. This solution considers both displacing meat with plant-based alternatives as well as adopting low-carbon meats. Increasing the adoption of plant-based diets in Georgia can provide equity-related benefits. For example, diets higher in fruits and vegetables are associated with improved health outcomes, and projects that focus on these benefits can help increase community access to healthy, fresh food. Next is Rooftop Solar. This includes small-scale solar installations that produce electricity for the buildings where they are located. As with large-scale solar, this solution can help reduce emissions from the electricity sector, which, as I mentioned, is our state's second largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. And there is a lot of opportunity for increasing rooftop solar in Georgia, since almost all of the solar capacity in our state comes from utility scale installations. The rooftop solar industry creates and supports jobs. In Georgia, there are already 4,000 solar-related jobs. And while the cost for installing solar can be a barrier, the cost for solar panels has come down significantly in recent years. Expanding rooftop solar can have equity-related benefits. For example, home solar systems can help reduce energy burden. As I mentioned, low-income Georgians face high energy burdens, meaning that an outsized portion of their income goes toward home energy bills, including electricity, natural gas, and other heating fuels. Being able to produce your own electricity can help lower your electricity bills and save solar owners money. Rooftop solar can also support community resilience, particularly when solar systems are paired with battery storage systems. These solar plus battery systems can allow homes and other buildings in a community to continue to provide power for a limited time when the larger electricity grid goes down. Finally, projects focused on rooftop solar can also help expand access to rooftop solar in Georgia and support local jobs. The last solution that I'm going to address is tree planting. This solution is focused on increasing tree planting across Georgia, and it's well suited to our state, where 60% of the land is naturally recruited and planted temperate forests. According to the Georgia Forestry Commission, about 150,000 acres are planted in Georgia each year with pine seedlings. Forests in our state sequester between 1 and 4 tons of carbon per acre each year. And in addition to carbon benefits, trees provide many other community benefits, such as shade and air and water quality improvements. However, trees are not distributed evenly throughout our communities. Nationwide, trees are often sparse in low-income neighborhoods and some communities of color. So, how can tree planting have equity-related benefits? Well, increasing tree canopy in low-income and BIPOC communities can increase access to shade, which can lower temperatures in communities that have few trees, making them safer on hot days, and even helping to reduce home cooling costs. Trees can also help reduce some air pollutants. Improved air quality is associated with positive health benefits, And similarly, trees can improve water quality. So with that, I will end my remarks. I want to remind everyone that applications for the Drawdown Georgia Climate Solutions and Equity Grant open on August 1st, 2022 and close August 31st. I encourage you to check out the grant's website, drawdownga.org/grants to learn more.